Welcome back. Uh, it's Trevor. It's Luke. No Zach, but you know what? He'll be here tomorrow. Don't worry about it. We're here. We've done plenty of mock drafts. We've done mostly Packers mock draft. This one we're gonna do a complete round one mock draft. We're gonna be picking every single team. What's the most likely? We'll probably do some trades too. And then we will get out of here. But we think this is what's gonna happen for the draft. Um, as always, like I said, me, Luke. With the draft coming up tomorrow, what holiday would you compare the NFL draft to?
What holiday? Before we get into okay, well, I'll talk about it after. What holiday? Like what holiday is really like there's a hype surrounding it? Um, I don't know, almost like a Thanksgiving maybe.
That's fair. I was thinking like a July 4th personally, just because no matter what happens, it's going to be good. Like
Fair.
Thanksgiving, people might be bitching. July 4th is just going to be you with a bunch of buddies drinking, eating like hot dogs and burgers and shit. And
Yeah,
that's as good as it gets.
enjoying the environment and it's a different environment, but watching the NFL draft is always an enjoyment. No, going off of that, and maybe I don't know, maybe I just been watching a lot of basketball lately, and I've been focused on basketball. But is there less hype around this draft?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm actually the exact opposite. I think there's less hype about the NBA playoffs.
I can understand
Um,
that.
And I don't know if it's part of me being a Bucks fan, feeling like the season was lost from Game 10 and then Giannis got hurt,
That's
or
fair.
if it's social media coverage of NBA being complete trash in game and on Twitter. So, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see because I don't know. I mean, right now I'm thinking the NFL draft. There will be some trades up, but I think it'll be mostly for offensive linemen. I think for the most part, this draft won't be as crazy as people are thinking. Are you in the same boat, or do you think it's just going to be, kind of like last year?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like there are some, and I guess you could say this about every draft, but it's I don't know more than normal. It kind of feels like we kind of know what direction some of these teams have to go, right? I mean, the first how many you could really like make a case that the first how many four, five, six, like all six of them are probably quarterback needy. Of course, Arizona's not going to go quarterback. Chargers aren't going to go a quarterback, but it, it, it it feels like a quarterback dominated draft maybe, and it kind of feels like you can really map out a couple more picks than the unpredictability of past drafts, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's where it comes from me.
So with that being said, if we're all teams, I say we just jump into it. Start with the Bears.
Let's hit it.
All
I,
right.
I
So
mean,
Bears number one. I mean, I
it's
think this one we probably have talked about the least. It's the best player in the draft. It's Caleb Williams.
yeah, it's obvious,
All
and
right, Washington.
I think Washington. It's kind of coming down to it being as obvious as Caleb Williams to the Bears. Like it sounds like Jaden Daniels to Washington is just set in stone.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it would be very funny if they go North Carolina quarterback again with Drake May.
Right.
But it's got to be Daniels.
And then just based off that, it kind of feels like this one's pretty obvious too, no?
Yeah, it feels like Patriots at three. That's got to be Drake May as well. Whether they make the pick or not, I don't know. But I mean, it's got to be him.
Yeah.
So here's where it gets interesting. So Arizona at four, like you said, they don't need quarterback. I mean, don't get me wrong, they could really use Marvin Harrison Jr., but obviously Malik Neighbors is there, Romo Dunze is there. If they wanted to trade really far back, Brian Thomas is there. Do you think they stay here and pick Marvin Harrison Jr., or do they think they move down here?
I mean, I understand moving down. This just feels like Marvin Harrison is probably might be the best player in this draft. It feels like a really bad idea to not take Marvin Harrison, right? He kind of feels like I'm not gonna call him a franchise changer, but as good of a player as you're gonna get in this draft.
Yeah, I'm the same as well. Offensive line, you can get later a difference maker like this, a wide receiver, you take them.
Yeah, agreed. Now I think is when it gets interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are two ways of looking at it. Obviously, pick five right now on the Chargers. According to PFF, they need running back, wide receiver, which they definitely need, tight end, defensive interior line, linebacker, cornerback. Um, Obviously, Malik Neighbors is there, Romo Dunze is there. Brock Bowers is there, but so is Joe Alt, a really good offensive lineman. Do you think they maybe think offensive line, or do they go, with the answer that's maybe too obvious and go Malik Neighbors?
So I'm kind of in the mindset that with Harbaugh taking over, right? He's probably about as old school as they come for coaching. It really feels like he's got to have a run game. He's got to keep Justin Herbert protected. With I like I think wide receiver, like, it would be great to have Malik Neighbors. There's a couple of receivers that you can get, late, late if you want to trade it back up into the first round. Even they've picked second round. I'm from the mindset you take the best lineman here, and I think you kind of build around that because you already kind of have some pieces in place. And I think it's all going to depend on keeping Herbert healthy and really establishing a run game. And um, we saw, obviously the NFL is different than college, but we saw what Harbaugh did at Michigan last year with that great run game, that great offensive line.
And with that, do you think there's a chance here that maybe they trade down? I don't know, with I don't. I guess I don't know who would trade up. Tennessee's probably going to stay pat, in my opinion. Do you think they possibly trade down maybe one or two slots to still get a lineman and hope, think with the thinking that somebody will jump them for wide receiver, but they still get their guys?
I think there's a possibility. I could see a team like a quarterback hungry team, like maybe the Vikings or the Broncos trading up, seeing three quarterbacks go and wanting to get their guy, before maybe a Vikings trade up to snag a JJ McCarthy before the Giants loom there at 6.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if the Giants are there, they're gonna take McCarthy.
Yeah,
So to your point, somebody would have to jump them. I'm interested to see what the Vikings are gonna do, only because they have a decent amount of holes. They have absolutely no quarterback, and I don't they like Drake May, but I don't think they can afford him. So do they settle on JJ McCarthy? I have no clue.
right. So
So
and maybe, and just to continue speaking on the Vikings here a little bit, maybe they wait. They wait for 11 for Bo Nix, or maybe they even pass. I know there's been a lot of hype lately about Spencer Rattler, and I know your opinion on him, but I don't know. It feels a little strange to go into the season with Spencer Rattler as your starting quarterback, though.
yeah, and as much as I am not a fan of Rattler, like I don't, and this recorded if you want. I don't know if he's that much worse than JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, they're different quarterbacks, but at least for me, if the Chargers are taking it, I think they should take Neighbors, but I think they will take Joe Alt.
Okay. So so I'm cool with doing neighbors and just seeing what happens here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
then
that's
here,
that's
I mean,
five skill players in the first five picks. That's a fun draft.
yeah, and I mean here it's the Giants. It would have to be McCarthy. I mean,
Yeah.
there would have to
Agreed.
be some team scrambling.
Agreed.
But I mean, if you're in it for a defensive player like the Falcons, once again, this is a perfect draft for him.
Right. Just looking. How do I get back to all? Whatever. So okay. So let's do. Oh, here's all. So if you're the Falcons, you know you're seeing a Cooper DeJean sitting there. You're seeing a Quinion Mitchell sit there. Even a Latu sitting there. Like, I don't think you need to move at all, and you just take the best player who you like out of those three when it comes to your pick in three
And
picks,
it,
right?
and I mean, depending on who is taken, like let's say a Malik Neighbors falls down a little bit, they might trade down with the Bears or the Jets, or if they have a guy that they don't know is going to be there. Because if they need defense really bad, Quinion Mitchell could fall, not because he's bad, but because nobody needs him.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Interesting. Yeah. So the Giants, we have to go McCarthy, right?
Yeah,
Do you think McCarthy got a little Will Levis to him?
I think he does.
Okay. So Titans here, like, best player available is Joe Alt, right? And that's a huge need. They just traded they just released their guy. Green Bay picked him up. They like, how do you pass up Joe Alt here at 7?
Absolutely. I mean, they need wide receiver. Romo Junze would be great, but like they have no offensive line and they don't have a Derrick Henry now. So now they're really fucked.
Yeah,
So I agree. They need to go Joe Alt.
and then here comes Atlanta with even right there, two no defensive players picked. Now you have your choice of anyone really that you want.
Yeah, and I mean defensive line, cornerback. I mean, take your pick. I mean, do you think there's a specific player or position they're targeting here? I think they're kind of like we kind of mentioned earlier. I think they're kind of sitting on their hands and he's just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm always in the mindset that like man, maybe it's just coming off the like when the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, like that defensive line was really, really fucking good, man. Those Giants teams that beat the Patriots both years, it was led by those defensive lines, right? So I think you need to build up that defensive line in order to, stop runs, get pressure from the inside. And whether that's Latu or Newton, probably not Newton, right? Because of his DWI. Is it Byron Murphy? Is it Latu? I'm between those right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's such a dumb way to do it, but I try to envision like what player seems like he's going to be in that jersey.
Right.
Like, you just have guys that Caleb Williams with the Bears just makes sense. Joel with Tennessee makes sense. For me, Byron Murphy just feels like a guy I'm going to see in an Atlanta jersey. Not that Latu isn't, but I mean, he just seems like a guy that's going to be their guy that they're going to take. I feel like they love Texas, big schools, Big 12.
Yeah,
I
they
feel like
have
that's their move.
with especially with Raheem Morris taking over, right, for him, defensive mindset. He's gonna need a dog on the inside. That's certainly Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy's got probably needs some a little bit development, but in Atlanta spot, they're not really, in a position where they get one player they're expected to win, right? It kind of feels like he can develop a little bit with the team and maybe coming out as, one of the best players on their team come 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, and I mean, their team, this division is so bad
Right.
that like they don't need him to be a difference maker off the bat. Like
Yeah.
they could easily make the playoffs with this team as well.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think Byron Murphy's the pick here. And that leads us back to Chicago.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting for me. Personally, like it might not be a quote unquote need. If I was the Bears, if I would think maybe if you can trading up 2 spots for Joe Alt, like you just got your franchise quarterback, you need to protect him if you want to make him a pocket passer, which is what I assume they do, even though they shouldn't.
Right.
But outside of Joe Alt, man, I think it's hard to pass on Romo Dunze here. I mean, you can have him, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore with Cole Kmet. I just don't see them going defense this early. I see them more likely to trade down personally.
I 100% agree with you. The thing too that Chicago is in a weird spot, right? Because if they don't trade down, they kind of have to. Of course, they're going to hit on this first pick, right? Caleb Williams, probably the best player in the draft. They only have 4 picks in this draft,
Yeah.
so I mean, they get their franchise guy in Caleb Williams. This 9 pick is it's either trade down and get more picks or take a guy who's going to be instant impact. So I don't know. Chicago's in a really weird spot, but I don't necessarily know that it's a horrible spot.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I mean, we say this every draft, depending on how it falls. Like, there's a very good, probably Joe Alt won't fall, but I mean, there could be a scenario where Malik Neighbors maybe falls, or somebody falls to them, and somebody's willing to trade up. You could probably get a late first, maybe even a second with that. That might be a little steep, but I mean, for a team having 4 picks, you got to do something.
Right, right. So what are you thinking here?
I'm leaning Odunze. Um, it it just makes the most sense for me personally.
I'm kind of with you on that. And Adunze kind of gives him like I'm not going to say that all he does is stretch the field, but it gives him a little field stretcher, right? So Keenan Allen can kind of work underneath, and DJ Moore can kind of work that intermediate to deep routes, right?
Yeah, and DJ Moore, he's never been a burner, so I don't really think they have one to your point, so
Yeah.
that does help them.
Yep. All right, let's do it. Fuck it. Jets.
Jets at 10. This one is very interesting to me because I think this is the worst place for them to be for what they need.
Right.
Obviously, you need a wide receiver, tackle, interior defensive line, and a safety. Safeties obviously are going to be late first, early second, so that's not here. Wide receivers, most of them are gone. Obviously, there are a good amount of tackles left, so I would assume they go tackle. Some people are thinking Brock Bowers. Are you thinking tackle here as well?
I think I probably right because I don't necessarily. Of course, wide receivers in need, right? Garrett Wilson stud. Mike Williams, it's yet to see stud if he can be on the field, right? My whole thing with the Jets is they get Aaron Rodgers back this year, and as me and you both know, Aaron Rodgers can really make anyone good at receiver. So I don't necessarily know that they need to use this 10 pick on. We need a bona fide receiver right now. You have a quarterback who at least in Green Bay has played with very bad receivers and made them very good. Um, so I think the number one priority has to be don't repeat exactly what happened last year and having Rodgers go down immediately, right? Get him some protection.
Yeah, and I mean, we have Fuaga, Fashanu, and Latham here. Um, I mean, if they really wanted to, I don't think they will, but I mean, there is a scenario where they could trade down a little bit too for teams that maybe want a offensive weapon that they don't think will fall, like a Brock Bowers, or maybe somebody really, really goes crazy for Michael Penix or a cornerback like Quinion Mitchell. But I think they eventually take offensive line. To your point, you got Aaron Rodgers for maybe 2 years, probably two to
Yeah.
three. You got to keep him on the field.
You got to maximize that as much as you can because I think right now the Jets are probably better than they were last year just based on the quarterback alone. And how many times have I ever said it? But offensive linemen are kind of like 3 point shooters or like lefty relievers. You can never have too many of them.
Yeah, and I mean, even if one is quote unquote bad, they still might be better than what they have.
Yeah. Do you prefer any of these? I guess I'm probably say four over the other.
Not at all. Personally, like I can envision Latham in a Jets jersey, but I understand it's a very stupid way to do it. I'd assume they go best available, go Fuaga.
All right, let's do it. Minnesota
Minnesota
Vikings.
Vikings at 11. Um, I saw in our 2 round mock draft on Flurry Sports, you have Brock Bowers, even with Hawkinson, get another tight end, 2 tight end sets with Justin Jefferson. Do you still like that pick here at 11?
I think I do, right? Because unless the Vikings are really tied to a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, Minnesota's going to have a quarterback problem either way, right? You either have a rookie starting, or you have Sam Darnold starting. I think getting as much help on the offense is going to benefit whoever starts at rookie, getting as many weapons as possible. And just in my mind, you're thinking someone like a TJ Hawkinson, you think you have a Brock Bowers and you have a Justin Jefferson. That'd be a pretty fucking fun offense, man. With Aaron Jones in the backfield, I think that's any quarterback's dream to have, those four weapons at the helm.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd agree too. And also, I mean, in my opinion, the best way to build a team is to build a team and then get a quarterback. I don't think that's a crazy thing, but you get Bowers, you get Hawkinson. I'd assume they get a deal done with Justin Jefferson. They have Aaron Jones. I'm assuming they can get him next year too. Even if a quarterback doesn't fall to you, you can just wait till next year. Worst
Right,
case scenario, you suck, you get a good pick, and you have all the pieces around them.
right. Yeah. So I think as someone who hates the Minnesota Vikings and is going to hate this pick, I think that they have to go Brock Bowers here.
I'd agree. Dude, defensive back, they do need it, but you know, how badly do they need it? I think playmakers are more.
Yeah. So the Denver Broncos, this is one where I think they have to go quarterback, right?
Yeah, wide receivers gone, cornerback, edge, center. Those are needs, but I mean, they have no quarterback. I don't care what they say. There's no way they think Zach Wilson's going to do well. I think they go Bo next personally. Um,
I would agree. I know if Zach was on the show right now, he would be pushing hard for Michael Penix. 'Cause I know Zach's a Michael Penix guy and also a Denver Broncos guy. To me, either way, it does not matter. Look at rank 35, 36. Like does one. So when I'm looking at quarterbacks, I'm looking at a quarterback that obviously, a good player or whatever, but it's someone that a fan base can really rally around, can really be a difference changer. Something that Denver hasn't had since, Peyton Manning was there. They tried with Russell Wilson and they missed. Do either of these guys speak that to you?
Um, Maybe Bo Nix. I mean, we talk about the experience that he has. I mean,
Yeah.
Penix has a lot too, but he also has injury problems. I'm just looking forward to the first person who says, Penix is a dual threat quarterback where he can make stuff happen with his feet. Because, I mean, quarterback wise, I mean, him and Bo Nix aren't that different running wise. I would argue Bo Nix maybe is better on the ground.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm with it. Yeah, I think Bo Nix. He set the record this year, right, for most accurate quarterback in college
I
football
believe
history or
so.
something.
Yeah.
It's hard to pass up. It's hard to pass
Hard
up.
to, pretty easy to do when you play Colorado for a game too.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, fuck. Let's do Bo Nix.
Now, here's where I think there is one name that makes total sense. Um, tr- I am looking for somebody to convince me that Terrion Arnold is not the most Raiders name player ever at cornerback. I think Quinion Mitchell's the best out of this, but I mean, Terrion Arnold just seems like a Raider. But I mean, do you think they go best available here or they go for their guy?
I They probably need to go corner, right? Just given Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert being in the division. Um, I and you wrote up the cornerback article, so I'll defer to you. I agree with Quinion Mitchell. Terrion Arnold's awesome at Alabama this year.
Yeah, he was good. I think it was really interesting because everybody has heard the name Kool-Aid McKinstry for like 2 years since he's a junior.
Hmm.
Um, and then Terry Arnold just kind of came out of nowhere. He's a great player. I mean, I have the only reason I put Mitchell ahead of him is because I mean Mitchell is just a physical freak. But to Arnold's credit, he played at Alabama. Mitchell played at Toledo, and
Right.
Arnold looked good in the SEC championship game. So
Yeah.
I can see there being an argument of him being the best corner in the draft.
Is there any thought of the Raiders seeing that um, Michael Penix is probably the best quarterback remaining for a very long time in the draft now, going them? I know they just picked up Gardner Minshew. Is he going to be a bridge quarterback? Are they going to build around? Probably not build around him, right? But do you think Gardner Minshew is good enough to kind of hold the ship steady while they figure the quarterback out maybe next year?
I mean, I'm thinking you got to keep Minshew as a bridge quarterback. Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't the only problem, but losing Josh Jacobs is big as well.
Yeah,
You need running back. I mean, you look at their needs: quarterback, running back, guard, tackle, interior, defensive, linebacker, cornerback. I think they have a great coach and they have a good start, but they need too much to draft a quarterback here,
agreed.
especially like a Penix with injury issues. I think you build a team first and then get your quarterback. And I mean, they're good quarterbacks next year as well.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe this is even a spot where the Raiders can trade down and stock up a couple more draft picks just to hit so many of their needs.
Yeah, and I mean, they're looking there. They got 3 tackles they'd be super happy with. Maybe they reach on a Newton. There are plenty of cornerbacks there. Like they can do whatever they want here.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with Arnold though. I think he fits the mold as a Raider. Um, we know the Davis family loves the big names, loves the excitement, and I think it's gonna be hard to find one on top of this draft board that's more than Arnold.
Yeah. So now we get to a team that really doesn't have many options.
Right.
The New Orleans Saints at 14 obviously need quarterback, wide receiver, tackle, defensive line. Um, I think they might need a little more than that as well. But um, do you have a specific person in mind for these guys, or are you thinking take tackle, please God, I'll help the offensive line?
Well, they're so tied in with Derek Carr right now because of the horrible GM decisions that were made. Um, so it probably makes total sense to go tackle, make sure they're healthy, get that offensive line help, offensive line depth. We know about Ramchek and Penning, how when they're at their best they're good, but we haven't seen them at their best for how many years now, just due to injuries and consistency, yada yada. So a tackle is probably the move here. I'm not necessarily sold, or I don't necessarily know that why doesn't New Orleans take Penix here and punt on the season and then build and just wait until Carr is off and kind of punt these next two and just go into total rebuild?
I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, I think the only detraction to that would be, you're wasting your quarterback service time. But
Yeah,
at the same point, if you really believe in Penix, why wait for a quarterback next year who may be as good as him when you can get him right now, if you
yeah,
believe?
yeah. And maybe this is stupid to say, but like Derek Carr is probably not the worst quarterback in the NFL to learn behind. I mean, he's been a starter for going on 10 years now. You know,
Yeah, and I mean, as bad as this team is, if they win the division, suddenly they're drafting much later next year.
right?
And that's not out of the realm possibility. Carolina is not winning it. Falcons, they have a good shot. Buccaneers have a decent shot, but I mean, it's the Saints. They're always going to be in it.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, and you probably shouldn't do this, but like this could even be another spot where Minnesota sitting here at 23 could bump up and get Penix, or I guess we had him take. Oh, they could bump up and take Penix here, right?
Yeah.
I'm just looking where's Penix going to go if he doesn't go here to New Orleans.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, when we were at Broncos, and I believe 12, yeah, 12 with Bo Nix, I think whoever's not taking there falls a little bit, just because I don't think anybody needs quarterback for the rest of first round, I would argue. Maybe the Rams kick the tires to learn under Stafford, but I don't think that's super necessary either.
Yeah. So and I just don't see Penix being a day two guy. Is my thing.
I can see him going to New Orleans. I mean, they've made a lot of interesting decisions before, and this wouldn't be the worst one, but it would be a left turn from what people would expect him to do, and that's what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess let's do it and just see how the rest of this plays out.
Yeah. And I mean, with that happening, here come the Colts wide receiver defensive back. They got to be loving this. Teams that would have to be loving this to trade up for tackle. They got to go Quinion Mitchell here, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. And just like let's look at it. Like none of these receivers are swaying you. These all kind of feel like a reach at 15, right?
Yeah, I love Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the third best player in the draft, or wide receiver, excuse me, in the draft. But 15 is too early for him.
Yep. Yeah. I think they'd be stupid not to take Quinion Mitchell here if he's available.
So then 16, we got the Seahawks guard, edge, linebacker, safety. Um, I think it's the Seahawks. I swear they're going to go defense every single year of my life. I think they go Latu or Turner here, personally.
I think Latu is probably the pick for him. He's a dog. He's a stud on the edge. This kind of gives Seattle, of course, no one is ever going to recreate the Legion of Boom, but this kind of gives them a little more personality than they have had on defense. Since the Legion of Boom, right? It kind of gives them a little bit of a I'm not going to call it a rebuild, but a little bit of a kind of a rebuilding starting point, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you also have, Devon Witherspoon there. And you're very quickly having a defense that has playmakers at almost every position.
Yep, yep. So I'm cool with Latu.
17, the Jags, guard edge, defensive back. This might be me. I think if the draft board shakes out this way, I think they're they're either gonna go edge or and I think both the edges might be taken from here. That's possible. This seems like maybe, to me at least, the most Cooper DeJean destination of all time.
Yeah, I agree too. And did we get that two round mock out yet?
I think we did. I'm not sure though.
If we haven't, it's a spoiler. Spoiler. I had the Jaguars here. I had them taking Cooper DeJean. Jaguars could use a little bit of help. It kind of feels like at every single defensive back position. And I think out of anyone in the draft, Cooper DeJean probably has the most versatility to play. Whether that's a good thing or not, who knows? They have a first-year defensive coordinator. I think drafting Cooper DeJean gives him a little of an opportunity to kind of mix stuff up and just kind of see what happens. Right? The Jaguars ended on a horrible note last year. A lot of that was of course, there was offensive inconsistency, but they were just getting gashed in the pass game. So I think Cooper DeJean is a player that can kind of be moved around and just kind of use him to figure out through the first 4 games here.
Yeah, and I mean, this. I mean, you look at that division. Obviously Houston is great. They're probably going to run that division, but I mean, outside of them, you got the Jaguars. I mean, obviously that's them. Indianapolis. Do they really sway anyway? Richardson's coming back. That's great, but obviously they have their struggles. And then Tennessee, they don't have Derrick Henry. Will Levis is great, but they don't have an offensive line right now. Like, there's a very strong chance, in my opinion, that they could sneak into the last wild card. Only because I mean, you're playing Indiana and the Titans four games a year.
Right.
You win those four, you really don't have to do much else.
Right. And then like looking ahead, the AFC with you have a Patrick Mahomes, you have a Justin Herbert, you have a Joe Burrow, you have a Lamar Jackson, you have a CJ Stroud, you have an Aaron Rodgers, you have a Josh Allen. There's so many good quarterbacks that you have to play. You have to have good defensive back play if you even want to think about sniffing a playoff win, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't believe in him as an outside corner, but slot safety, he can do either. And then obviously, if you have an injury, you can move him wherever you need to, like you said. He seems like a great pick here.
Yep.
So we got the Bengals. Their needs, according to PFF, tight end, tackle, defensive interior. Obviously, the news that Trey Hendrickson requested a trade. So did T. Higgins. That obviously complicates things. But with a board that looks like this, with Fashanu, and Latham, and some great edges and defensive interiors, I'm assuming you're thinking they go offensive line.
I think they have to, right? I mean, Joe Burrow is just so important to that team, right? They, missed the playoffs last year without him. He is everything for Cincinnati right now. I think they have to keep him healthy, especially with Joe Mixon out of town now. They need to help establish a run game. Well, I think Joe Burrow is good enough to be a quarterback who can play with a subpar run game. You still need a run game in the NFL, right? And so my pick here, who I think probably is second best lineman in this draft, is J.C. Latham.
I have no problems with that at all. With J.C. Latham going to the Bengals, we got Rams 19 there. Needs quarterback, tackle, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback. I'm assuming we're going to see a tackle run here. Or do you think maybe they go edge, even though there are two great tackles here?
This is another one, right, where you got some excitement out of Kyron Williams last year. That was kind of working a little bit. Um, Matthew Stafford's not getting any younger. You don't want to see him injured, so I'm probably tackle. I think it has to be a tackle, and you could probably make that argument for every single team remaining that it probably has to be a tackle. But the Rams, more than not, I think this one probably needs to be a tackle. This is also one where I can see the Rams trading back just because they haven't had how many you know basically no draft picks in the last couple of years, and they got spots to fill. That they can kind of fill with young talent while still somewhat kind of competing. Obviously, we haven't done any trades. I assume we're not going to do any trades through the rest of the first round here. Given this pick, I love tackle here.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head about trading down. Obviously, Miami needs a tackle. They need offensive line as well. They could be seeing this panicking, offering a decent amount to trade up 2 picks. And then if you're the Rams, if there are no tackles remaining, well, that's fine. You can get some defensive linemen, some edge.
Yep.
The world's their oyster here, but I would agree, out in a vacuum, they probably go offensive line here.
Yep. So I mean, I don't prefer one over the other. I probably Fatano is probably higher
Yeah,
on there.
let's keep them on the coast.
Okay.
And that's going to kind of tie into who I think is going 20 Steelers. Penn State guy is right here. They need a tackle. Fashanu. It just makes sense. He is from Penn State as well. I mean, it seems too easy. I think Brian Thomas is a good second option, though.
I was gonna
I
say
really
it
do
feels like a
like it.
Pittsburgh pick, right?
It feels like it would be really fun. Um, but I think here, if they have one, we talk about young quarterbacks. you know, Obviously Justin Fields is no longer a young quarterback, but they got to protect him or Wilson, whatever happens.
Yeah,
You got to give the quarterbacks the tools to see what you can do. Whether that's wide receiver or tackle, I think it's one of them.
yeah. I'm totally with tackle here. They invested in quarterbacks in the offseason. If those two don't work, they're going to get so much shit for trading for both of them. And the number one way to ensure that a quarterback stays on the field is for sure tackle.
And I mean, even if none of them work, you got a good tackle. You can get your quarterback next year. They'll be
And
fine.
what's been the number one thing that people have bitched about for the Pittsburgh Steelers other than Kenny Pickett? There's been no offensive line to get Najee Harris going, right?
And now they have Jalen Warren too. If you get an offensive line with both of them, maybe you can use Fields as a runner instead of a pocket quarterback and just use the run game.
Yep, I'm with it.
Miami Dolphins at 21, tight end, guard, tackle, defensive interior. Still got some good edge rushers there. Obviously, it's not who they're looking for. Do you think maybe they're looking down the board a little bit? Do you think maybe they make a little bit of a reach? Maybe they trade? What are your thoughts here?
Um, I'm wondering if this is a spot where we see Drazon Newton go. He kind of fits that bill that they need of right, kind of a run stopper who can clog the middle a little bit. He obviously a little bit of a slide due to his arrest. But Miami's, they're a good team. They're in a good spot. Why not take the best player available here?
Yeah, I'd agree too. And I mean, even though his sack numbers aren't good at all, um, he also plays with Illinois in the Big Ten West that runs the ball a shit ton. Miami might, to your point, might just use him as a run stopper. They probably won't even care as long as he can take up two offensive linemen or whatever. So that just makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one that could be a possibility of like how did Miami get Newton at 21?
And speaking of how could they get him, the Eagles need wide receiver. I understand that. I understand linebacker. I understand defensive back. I would not be surprised at all if they go Dallas Turner on the edge here. If he
Agreed.
falls, I mean, they have clearly said we're going to take the best player available. Fuck you. Their defense really did. I mean, their offense fell apart, but their defense was shredded by Tampa Bay. I think they'd love to have a guy like Turner reverse on this team.
I think Dallas Turner for sure. This is another one like last year when who was Javon Carter fell in their lap. Is
Yep.
that who it was last year?
Yep.
This is another one like how do you pass up Dallas Turner here?
So now we're back to the Vikings. Their first pick, if I remember correctly, they took Brock Bowers. Obviously, you still would need a quarterback, guard, defensive interior, cornerback. It seems like you're in the mind of them going quarterback here, maybe Spencer Rattler, or
I don't think so.
maybe they wait.
I just wanted to see. I kind of forgot that we had Penix going to New Orleans.
So do you think maybe they go defense side of the ball, offense side of the ball? Maybe they go, even though they don't need to tackle, maybe a Graham Barton, do some shifting there. Maybe they go Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jackson Power Johnson.
Um, it, mm, so I people have been very split on this that I've seen. I think for Minnesota to compete, they're going to have to stop the offenses of Green Bay and Chicago, right? Whether the and obviously Detroit, great offense, right? Great offensive line, great weapons, um, great offensive minded coach. Now Chicago, are they going to have a good offense? They have good players, probably, right? Can Green Bay replicate what they did last year? I think that's still yet to be seen, but Minnesota probably needs to build up a little bit of a defense here, right? In order to just keep those games competitive because there are pieces on all three of those teams that can, you know, that are probably going to beat Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be really fun if they took Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, for
I would
sure.
hate it, but I mean, put two tight ends and those two receivers out and say "fuck you, beat us" with Aaron Jones in the backfield. It would be very funny with Sam Darnold back there. To your point, I think they need to go defense. I don't know if that's Wiggins or McKinstry. I mean, they took Booth a couple years ago, who's from Clemson. That's not really telling me they have a trend of Clemson or anything. But um, personally, I'd go McKinstry. But I mean, both are solid options. I think they're very close.
Yeah, McKinstry to me, and I don't know what your thoughts are on Nate Wiggins, but McKinstry to me kind of gives him a little bit of a, he likes to press up, he likes to play a little physical, bump some receivers off the routes. That feels like a little bit more of a, of a personality on defense as opposed to Nate Wiggins.
Yeah, Nate Wiggins to me, I think he's got a higher ceiling, but I think he's less polished. Like,
Sure.
I think he has like, he still does not turn around to view the ball. I mean, that's something that can be taught, and his physical attributes are incredible, but, I mean, Kinstry is just gonna guy that is a guy that's just going to come in, slot in day one, and work.
Yeah.
And I think Minnesota, your point, is not that they can't use a project, but I mean, why take a project when you can take a guy whose ceiling might be a little lower, but his floor is way higher.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I think those Cooley McKinstry, Justin Jefferson battles in training camp will be fun.
And another thing that would be fun, and I hate to say it, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I think CD Lamb needs some help. Don't get me wrong. Cowboys need a lot.
Yeah.
They need a lot. Nobody's talking about how, I don't want to say bad, but how hurt this team is right now. These guys clearly love offense. Jerry Jones will draft whoever the fuck he likes. I think Brian Thomas is that guy.
Yeah. Yep. He's gonna sell jerseys. People are going to fall in love with him. The Dak truthers are going to say that once they draft Brian Thomas, this is going to be another top 5 offense, another maybe top 3 passing offense, and I think that's right up Jerry Jones' alley. I'm with it.
And here we are where we started. The Green Bay Packers. Um, I don't like it. I feel like they're going to Marius Mims, and there's no doubt about it in my mind.
I 100% agree with you. My only pushback will be that Gutekunst hasn't never drafted an offensive tackle in the first round. Does that
That's
change this
true.
year?
That's true. And I mean, to your question, I mean, or to your point, I mean, you know, it would be funny if he goes wide receiver here in the first round. I don't think he will. Does he say best player on the board, Jared Verse? We don't need an edge, but we can find a place for him. Does he, what does he do? To your point, if he hasn't used a first round tackle, I mean, there are some other players there that they could definitely do, maybe even trade down.
Yeah, and this is probably a trade down spot, right, for him because I think a couple days ago in his presser, Gutekunst mentioned that he wanted to get more draft picks. I guess how many ever is too? What does he have? What do we Packers have 13 this year? That's
Yeah.
too little. But probably the pick is probably Amarius Mims. It's just such a glaring need.
Yeah.
Zach's been on here talking about it. We've talked about it in Lombardi Sweep. That um, Zach Tom's best football is probably in the interior. So if you can get him into his best spot and get a guy who can kind of, you know, who's got definitely the physical attributes to play tackle there. And we saw, Green Bay's not opposed to running that rotation with their linemen. Maybe that's something that they continue to do with Mims for at least the first couple games to just get him some time on the field.
And I mean, it's a quote unquote boring pick, but I mean, it's probably the right one.
Yeah,
To your point about Zach, even if he's a project, like, you know, don't get me wrong, you do need help now in the offensive line, but you don't need it so glaringly that you need to trade up for, a Fatanu, Fashanu, Fuaga, guys like that.
for sure, for sure. And it's Georgia, right? That'd be the fourth year
Yep.
in a row they drafted Georgia guy.
And he's 21, and
Yep.
everybody but one has been 21. So
Yep.
here we go to another team that needs a lot. Running back, tight end, center, guard, edge, linebacker, corner. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're circling him. You're thinking Jared Verse. I agree. Why do you think Jared Verse?
I mean, it's just best player available to me. Tampa Bay really quietly had a good offseason. Like they didn't really lose much of a team that made the playoffs last year. Now I know some things went their way to make the playoffs. They did ink Baker Mayfield, right?
Yep.
They got Mike Evans back. Chris Godwin's still there. I think their offense is at this point it's tolerable. It's fine. I don't know that adding a player right now is going to do you any better than what you were last year. So I think best player available. It's a position of need. Tampa has totally in their Super Bowl year and in the Tom Brady days, it was totally best defense in the league. Todd Bowles is a defensive guy. I think he's going to take a dog here. Jared Verse at one point was a top 5 player in this draft. Like how do you? I don't think they can pass up on Jared Verse.
And this team, the Buccaneers kind of remind me of the Eagles as of late, in the sense that they're a team that they get up to the draft board and you're like, how the hell did this guy fall to him again on
Right.
defense?
Yep.
Jared Verse is that guy, and I mean, with them needing so much, he seems like a great keep him in the
Yep.
state, keep him in Florida.
Agreed.
Cardinals back up again, wide receiver, center, guard, defensive line, linebacker. Obviously, they already took Marvin Harrison at 4 on this mock draft, so wide receivers pretty much good. I mean, they took could take it second, but obviously that would be not smart. You could just wait or get a free agent. So you're circling Jackson Powers Johnson. Zach has talked about him. Probably, not probably, is one of the best players in the draft. He is a center. Zach says he can play, interior line. Um, Obviously, Cardinals need interior line. He kind of reminds me of, we saw Kyle Hamilton. We saw Tyler Linderbaum. Not many teams need it, so they
Yep.
don't go for it. But he's probably, you'll look back 2 years later and you go, he was probably one of the top 10 players in that draft easily.
Yep, yep. I think you take him here. I think I think you could probably. I'll hear the conversation for Nate Wiggins, but Arizona's gonna. I mean, I think their defense, that while it has holes, I think it's in a little bit better spot than their offense is. I think you get two studs in Marvin Harrison, Jackson Powers, Johnson, to help bolster. You know that they're gonna keep with Kyler Murray here, and so get him his guy on the offensive line and keep everyone happy there. I'm totally with it.
And with that pick, we go to the Bills. Wide receiver, tackle, defensive interior, linebacker, defensive back. Obviously, traded Stephon Diggs to Houston.
Yep.
Um,
Gabe Davis is at Jacksonville.
Gabe Davis at Jacksonville. Their number one receiver right now is either Curtis Samuel or Khalil Shakir. Obviously, Shakir is more of a slot guy, and Samuel's kind of, you know, whatever he is at this point in his career. I see you circling wide receiver. I'm in the mindset of Adonai Mitchell. I know you like Troy Franklin a lot. Obviously, a lot of people like Lad McConkey. Who are you looking at wide receiver here? Because I think Buffalo really needs a wide receiver.
Yeah, I think it feels weird to say this, but Buffalo's probably the most wide receiver needy team in this draft, right? Whoever they like more between Adonai Mitchell and Troy Franklin, they need a stud on the outside. I'm with you on Adonai Mitchell. I think Troy Franklin is the kind of guy who can get open, and is gonna be open. And at least that's what he showed in college. Now, come NFL, you're gonna obviously much better defense, better corners, better defensive schemes. We know Josh Allen likes to whip the ball, and I think Adonai Mitchell probably fits the bill better of going up for jump balls, going up for contested catches than Troy Franklin does. So I think Mitchell will probably help the Bills more than Franklin. Not that Franklin wouldn't help the Bills, but I think Mitchell's a pick here.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, and to your point about them needing wide receiver the most, the Chargers can get Malik Neighbors if they want. I think we had them taking Joe Alt, but either way, they can get Malik Neighbors. They can get Roma Dunze. They're probably going to get one of those guys. Um, Buffalo has none of them. So even though I love Adonai Mitchell, 6'4", 196, whereas Troy Franklin is 6'3",
Similar.
187, both big guys.
Yeah.
Um, Man, the Bills are gonna need another wide receiver fast for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they go wrong with either one of them here. It's whoever they prefer over the other.
Lions, a team we totally both know and love. Um, Guard, edge, cornerback. You're saying Nate Wiggins here. I totally agree. I think he's an absolute dog. He's the best guy on this board. I can see them going Chop Robinson because we know Dan Campbell loves his nicknames and they need an edge. Um, but he's gonna go dog. He's gonna get with the physical features. Um, I can't remember off the top of my head. I believe it was a corner who got arrested for the Lions and he got released by them. Um, can't remember his name, but I mean, they need secondary help. They have since probably the turn of the century.
Yep.
Nate Wiggins seems like the guy for me.
Yep. It's same thing, same reason as I have with the Vikings. You know, you have Justin Jefferson, you have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, you have the flurry of Packer receivers. You're going to need to just keep up with the loaded talent in the passing game in this offense, or in this division, I should say.
Nate Wiggins goes to Lions. We go to the Ravens. Wide receiver, guard, tackle, edge, corner. Now it's getting not dicey. There's still some good players here, but not as cut and dry as in the past. A lot more options. I would say a lot more chances to trade down. Do you think they have a certain guy in mind here, a certain position?
As much as I would love to see Troy Franklin with Lamar Jackson, it probably needs to be a tackle, right? They're bringing in Derrick Henry for a reason. They're going to run the ball. It's going to be an incredible run game between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. with Linderbaum on the offensive line. I don't see why they don't just keep buffing it up, and just beating teams to death with it. I don't necessarily think that receiver was a reason that they lost to the Chiefs last year. And we've seen the Ravens. I guess they haven't really made the Super Bowl, but we've seen them kind of get away with very good teams without that stud receiver. I think they may, could Odell resign? Maybe there are some receivers still out in free agency that I think they could go get rather than grabbing a Franklin right now. I think offensive line is probably the move for them. Like right, they bring Derrick Henry for a reason.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, I mean, they lost to Kansas City. You can argue they're the better team in that game.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody would argue that if they won that, they'd be in the Super Bowl. Now, I won't say whether they would have won the Super Bowl, but I mean, they have been very close for multiple years. So clearly, to your point, wide receiver isn't really a need. And with Derrick Henry, I mean, who the hell wants to line up on that defensive line?
Yep. 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 Let's do it.
Penultimate pick, 49ers guard tackle corner. I think this is easy. I think we're going to scroll down a little bit. I think they're taking one of the tackles. They're going to go Guyton or Morgan here.
So I agree. And I'm honestly I don't necessarily know what San Francisco is going to do here. It's probably the one that I don't really have a strong opinion either way of what they should do. You're in the mindset of a tackle. They probably have to go Morgan, right? They're not going to take because Guyton, he's a stud physically. He's another one of those developmental guys who's going to need some time to play. With
Yeah.
how obscure and how different Kyle Shanahan's run schemes are, with guys flying all over the place. Do you think that they settle for a Guyton and try to get him in right away? Or are they going to go with the more pro ready Morgan? It kind of feels like more pro ready Morgan, right?
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, their line is definitely a need. It's always nice to beat it fed up, and I mean they're contending now. So they're not the Packers. I think they go for the pro ready instead of the project.
Yep.
Last pick, Chiefs, wide receiver, tackle, defensive line. I don't know if they need to go wide receiver as much as some people are saying, only because, of course, now I can't think of his name. Obviously, they lost Rashee Rice, but they do have Marquise Brown. Clearly, they've done it before with not great wide receivers. I think they go offensive line or defensive line here. But what's your thinking here?
I agree. With how bad their Chiefs receivers were last year, their offensive line wasn't anything special. Like Jawan Taylor's maybe the worst offensive lineman last year.
Even with jumping
You're
early
right,
every play?
right. So I think that they go that. I really like a decent Isaac or Chop Robinson here too, to give him a little bit of press on that defensive line. I think that I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know that they want to go Guyton just for that developmental factor, and that they're in a win now. They're going for a three-peat here. So I think just adding more depth and more studs on the defensive line may be the move.
I'm gonna say we go Chop Robinson. I think there is something there with Andy Reid and chops, and there's gonna be memes made from that. So give me the credit once it happens. He's a good player. He's a guy that I think in a lot of other drafts would have gone much earlier. You look at athlete, that's what you need. To your point, they don't need a development; they just need reinforcements. He's exactly that.
Yep.
So with that, we'll quickly recap. Shout out to the award down there. The mock draft. We will go through number 1 to the Bears. We did no trades. Number 1 to the Bears, Caleb Williams. Number 2 to Washington, Jaden Daniels. 3 to the Patriots, Drake May. 4 to the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr. 5 to the Chargers, Malik Neighbors. 6 to the Giants, J.J. McCarthy. 7 to the Titans, Joe Alt. 8 to the Falcons, Byron Murphy II. 9 to the Bears, Romo Dunze. 10 to the Jets, Talise Fuaga. Talise Fuaga. 11 to the Vikings, Brock Bowers. 12 to the Broncos, Bo Nix. Boy, is that a Broncos player.
You're right.
13 to the Raiders, Terrion Arnold. 14 to the Saints, we'll change it up, Michael Penix Jr. 15 to the Colts, Quinion Mitchell. 16 to the Seahawks, Latu. 17, Cooper DeJean, Jacksonville. 18, J.C. Latham. Bengals, 19, Troy Fatanu. Rams, 20 to Steelers, Fashanu,
Oh,
21
geez.
to the Dolphins. Drizon Newton, 22 to the Eagles. Dallas Turner, 23 to the Vikings. Kool-Aid McKinstry, 24 to the Cowboys. Brian Thomas Jr., 25 to the Packers, of course, Amarius Mims. 26 to the Buccaneers, Jared Verse. 27 to the Cardinals, JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson. 28 to the Bills, Adonai Mitchell. 29 to the Lions, Nate Wiggins. 30 to the Ravens, Graham Barton. 31 to the 49ers, Jordan Morgan. And rounding out to the Chiefs, Chop Robinson of Penn State. Overall, how many trades do you think we're gonna see? And do you think it's gonna kind of be like last year, a ton in the top 10, or maybe more spread throughout?
I think at least I don't think that there's a trade within. I'm going to say these first four, right?
Okay.
I don't think we're going to see Houston Texans last year, right? Or was that last year or 2 years
Yep.
ago? Last year, where they get their guy on offense and their guy in defense. I, I said I think the Chargers might be in a spot where they can trade down, just so Jim Harbaugh can kind of build his team a little bit. They got the new GM there, and just kind of maybe they trade out, like I said, trade down with the Vikings here, or even with the Broncos, and get some picks to kind of move around a little bit and build a team. Um, Now, Giants, could they trade up? Maybe they trade up a spot. I think the Titans. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd probably say maybe 4 or 5 trades. I don't think that's anything crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, what I'm taking from this, I think this is going to be the most competitive and the hardest offensive rookie of the year race in recent memory. Obviously, tackles, they're not going to win it, but a lot of wide receivers, a lot of quarterbacks, tight end in there. I mean, how many defensive players are even going to be drafted in the first round? I don't know. We'll see, but it's going to be real interesting. I think there is a real good chance of a lot of guys falling. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers level, but I mean, we kind of pointed out, Dallas Turner could fall, Brian Thomas Jr., depending on where you think he could go, could fall. Nate Wiggins, Jared Verse, we'll see.
Yep. It's
One
Go
last
ahead.
question for you. One team you are the most excited to see what they do.
Well, like I said when we were doing the draft, I think Chicago's in a really interesting spot, right? They for I know we hear it every offseason, but this really feels like an offseason where Chicago can make some moves and kind of, plan for the future here. They're gonna get their guy in Caleb Williams. Whatever they do at 9, like I said, this could be a spot where maybe they trade down considering they only have 4 picks. I actually think this is a spot where they will trade down. Just I think there's a little more pieces to fill than just Caleb Williams for Chicago to be competitive. I and probably the NFC North bias, but I'm excited to see what Chicago does. Um, is there anyone else? I think Chargers are another one just because they have a new regime in there. I'm excited to see where JJ McCarthy goes. Like I
Yeah.
said, I think there's a little Will Levis in there. He's projected high. Could he fall? Maybe. Other than that, I think this is a really interesting spot. These three for those last 2 quarterbacks between Bo Nix and Michael Penix. I think
12
they
to
go.
15,
Yeah,
Broncos, Raiders, Saints, Colts.
even 11 to 16, I think will be an interesting range. I think we could see a couple quarterbacks go like we have here. We have Brock Bowers. This is probably where the start of the really good defensive players go. I think this will be a really interesting spot to see: Vikings, Broncos, Raiders, Saints, Colts, Seahawks.
For me, I'm gonna pick again, I guess, NFC North bias. I mean, you alluded to it, the Vikings. We're gonna find out their feelings towards Sam Darnold and what they want to do at quarterback. You look 1 through 10, you mostly know what they're gonna do, especially with the Bears having won. 12 through 16, things can happen, but they're probably gonna stand pat. Who know if the Vikings really like Drake May, maybe they trade up. I don't see it, but it's possible. Maybe they trade down. Do they go with Brock Bowers? Do they go defensive player? We're gonna find out what they think about their team real fast here.
Yep. I think this is going to be a spot too. Like we have 3 tackles going in a row. We have another tackle here at 25, 30, 31, 10, 7. This is going to be This is going to be a bad draft for casual football fans, I think.
And I think this will be a draft that will, no matter how it shakes out, be very fun to look back at because there will certainly be guys near the top that are bad, guys that fell to the bottom because nobody needed them that are all pros, maybe Hall of Famers. I won't go that far to say there will be, but it's possible.
Yeah. And I guess before we get off here, I'm just looking at this. So the Cardinals have two picks. Marvin Harrison, Jackson Powers Johnson. That's probably I'm just thinking back to the Lions last year. They had the two picks and drafted Jameer Gibbs
Jack Campbell.
and Jack Campbell. A lot of people hated those picks for whatever reason. This is probably a good start for a team who's kind of doesn't really have a direction right now for the Cardinals, right? Harrison and Powers Johnson.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, going back, 27 was Houston's pick. You know, dare to say, I think you could argue that that trade worked out for both teams. I think Houston won it, but Cardinals can still get a very good player there. But Houston parted with the 27th pick and some other picks to get their guy on offense and defense. You don't see that very often.
Right, right, and just going along here. I mean, we talked ad nauseum about Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. Minnesota, I think, would be really interesting if they go Bowers. I don't, like I said, I think that's a total trade up spot for them to get their quarterback of the future. But if they can partner Brock Bowers with Cooley McKinstry, they get two absolute studs on both sides of the ball here.
Absolutely. And Zach said in the chat, Eagles have traded up in 4 of the past 5 first rounds. It would be interesting to see who their target is. And, they're obviously not shy about going after him, but, in our mock draft, we haven't taken Dallas Turner. They can wait. Do they wait? Do they trade up? We'll see.
And I'm just reading the chat here. I forgot to look at the chat. Zach, if you're still in the chat, let me know. Do you, and 100% cool if you disagree. Is this a spot where New Orleans can kind of punt on the season and take a Michael Penix if he's available? And I guess while we wait for Zach, is there one player, Trevor, that you're kind of excited about to see after watching college last year to see him in the NFL?
I am real, and I didn't watch much of him until I watched film on him. Quinion Mitchell is really interesting to me. I mean, he might be the most athletic quarterback that's come out of college in the last decade. He did not allow a touchdown to him. He once had 4 pick sixes in a game.
Damn,
I understand he played at Toledo. The MAC has had some talent come out of there. If he's in the right spot, he could be a very, very good player his first year. He'll have a learning curve, but I mean, if he somehow goes to a team, I think it's unlikely, but if he somehow goes to a team, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Seahawks take him. The Seahawks have a real problem there in their secondary with him and Witherspoon. I don't think it will happen, but if he's a guy that can be quarterback too, boy, that's going to be one of the best secondaries in the league real fast.
for sure. For sure. I don't necessarily disagree. And here's Zach in the chat. They won't go quarterback, but they could trade down and just try to get more cheap guys in the cap hell. It may make sense. Grab a lineman. That's probably the move, right? Like I said, I don't hate them, punting on the season, but whatever. Saints are a dumpster fire anyways. So any move that they make probably helps them in the end. Um, and then
And
just for me, just to answer my question about who I'm excited to see, like I'm really excited about Jared Verse. I know he kind of fell down draft boards. He at one point in the college season, he was one of the best players. You don't just lose being a really good player. I think Tampa Bay is going to get a stud here with him, and I think, like we said before, like that's going to be a player. Like how did he drop to 26?
last question I'll ask you: if Penix doesn't go to the Saints, does he drop to the second round?
So I don't necessarily know that Penix drops to 14 here. I think if Minnesota may go Bo Nix and Denver may pick up Penix just to get their guy.
Okay. Well, you have it here first. That is our first round mock draft. Come back, after tomorrow and make fun of us, or give us our flowers. And if we get more than 5 right, you have to go to our YouTube page at Flurry Sports. And you have to subscribe. I don't make the rules. That's just how it works.
Yep.
Any last messages to send anybody off on?
No, just check out flurrysports.org. Zach in the chat here saying his mock draft is out. The three of us who collaborated on a 2-round mock draft that'll be out tomorrow. It's just mock draft season, man. It's very fun. This is once again where you can kind of get an idea of what teams are going to do, but in reality, nobody knows if it's going to be a good pick or not, and that's what makes sports fun is just bitching and talking about players and everyone having their own opinion.
And the videos and the memes will be out in full force. Packer fans railing on Bears fans, vice versa. You name it. So with that, we will leave you be. Tune in tomorrow. We will have a live draft stream again. We break the trades on it. We are watching the draft with you. We're giving our thoughts. Obviously, Zach has coached semi-pro offensive line, a lot of offensive linemen going. So if your team is drafting offensive linemen, you know, check into him. As he said, shout out Panay Sewell. Shout out Panay Sewell. So check into him, and we know what we're talking about. We're more right than we're wrong a lot. So if you want to know, initial thoughts, tune in starting as soon as the draft starts.